All right, so number three, just wrapping that up. So I mentioned Rumspringa, and then one last final example I'll just briefly mention would be that there's sometimes places or times when deviance is expected or allowed. So if you think about spring break, typically do a lot of things we normally don't do or that we probably wouldn't be able to get away with during spring break, and then if we think about particular destinations, whether that's spring break destinations or Las Vegas, I mean, literally, the the tagline for Las Vegas is, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Just this idea that, that's where bad behavior is encouraged, or not necessarily bad behavior, but behavior that we typically don't engage in our normal everyday lives. So in those instances, there's this open door policy, or this leeway for deviant behaviors. And then fourth and finally, I've already mentioned this before, but I think it's important to just acknowledge that norms, what we're expected to do, and then the violation of those norms, acts of deviance, are entirely constructed by us. They're socially constructed, meaning that they're not necessarily natural or ordained by nature or anything along those lines. But we, as a culture, kind of give life and give credence to norms, and by definition, these acts of deviance. So one question that especially conflict theorists might ask in terms of norms and deviance is, who is it that establishes these rules to begin with, that define what's acceptable and what's deviant, and whose interests might be served by those particular practices. So those are always interesting questions to kind of explore whenever you do think about deviant behaviors. Just one quick final example to illustrate that would be the Prohibition movement. We'll probably spend more time during our section on social movements discussing this, but there's been a long history of, or there was a long history of individuals that were invested and opposed to the Prohibition movement. And for the span of X number of years, alcohol production, distribution, and drinking itself was illegal. And that really does illustrate how there were vested interests on both sides of that issue that were at play in the Prohibition movement. So I'll go ahead and end it there, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.